Hello and welcome. I'm Rawia Alami and this is the Dailies, where we take a look at important news stories, reports, analyses and articles published in newspapers and media outlets across the world. Many themes ran across newspapers today, with the news of the car ramming into a crowd of Liverpool fans last night, injuring almost 50 people, heavily reported by the British media outlets. Also, many newspapers reported today on the deadly Israeli attacks on Gaza, as new aid group says it has begun distributing food, mentioning that a second official resigns from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. And while the video of the French president being shoved in the face by his wife received a lot of attention, American newspapers continued to focus on what it described as President Trump's war on Harvard and his threats to redistribute $3 billion in Harvard grants to trade schools. As the Harvard saga continues, Philip Bump wrote in the Washington Post criticizing the Trump's administration's decision regarding Harvard, describing it as politically motivated and questioning the validity of its claims about campus anti-Semitism and safety. The article reviews the Trump's administration's recent move to revoke Harvard University's certification to enroll foreign students, citing claims that Harvard fosters an unsafe environment with anti-Semitism and pro-terrorist conduct. The author contends that the evidence for these accusations is weak, largely based on also minor campus protests and isolated incidents, saying that the administration's rhetoric inflates fears of terrorism and anti-Semitism to justify targeting universities seen as liberal strongholds. Bump goes on to say that critics argue that this is part of a broader plan where political goals precede facts, using harsh language to discredit opponents. The article highlights how these actions reflect ongoing hostility towards higher education institutions and raise concerns about selective enforcement and political motives behind federal policies. More on higher education in the U.S., while Ramesh Ponnuru wrote in the Washington Post saying Trump is right, the student loans need to be repaid. The Wall Street Journal published a detailed report on its front page explaining how the student loan crisis in the U.S. will show up in the economy. The article, as you can see, reviews the impact of restarting student loan payments in the U.S. after the pandemic pause. Millions of borrowers now face monthly payments again, causing financial strain and a surge in loan delinquencies or defaulting payments. Over 5 million borrowers are in default as collections resume, with many at risk of wage reduction and lower credit scores. The report included a chart, as you can see, that shows that student loan delinquencies surged sharply in early 2005, as you can see here, with nearly 8% of balances over 90 days overdue, up from less than 1% in the previous quarter. The jump followed the end of the pandemic payment pause and the resumption of collections. The rate has now returned to pre-pandemic levels, highlighting increased financial stress for millions of borrowers. The report highlights that many borrowers, especially those with lower incomes or from southern states, are struggling the most. Credit scores have dropped sharply for millions, making it harder to get loans or housing. Ultimately, the report points out that economists warn this could slow economic growth and leave many Americans financially vulnerable. The New York Times published two analyses on its front page. One about the growing diplomatic isolation Israel is facing after unprecedented public criticism and diplomatic pressure from its closest Western allies, including the United States, Britain, France, and Canada, while the other focused on President Trump's reaction to the latest Russian attacks on Ukraine. The article reviews President Trump's rare criticism of Vladimir Putin after Russia's largest attacks on Ukrainian cities, which killed many civilians. Trump, who once praised his relationship with Putin and promised quick peace talks, now calls Putin absolutely crazy and says Russians' attempt to take all of Ukraine could indeed backfire. However, the analysis highlights that Trump still refuses to join Europe in imposing new sanctions or giving more military aid to Ukraine, creating a gap in U.S. leadership. Experts say Trump's pattern is to complain about Russian violence but avoid action, weakening support for Ukraine. The article concludes that Trump's shifting positions and his reluctance to pressure Russia causes uncertainty for both Ukraine and America's allies. Israel Hayom published an explainer report providing a detailed analysis of Hamas's current state of crisis, drawing on rare admissions from group officials about their unprecedented challenges. It highlights the loss of senior leaders, a weakened command structure, and severe financial difficulties, with many fighters unpaid and key money channels destroyed. The review notes that Hamas is now run by less experienced commanders, and also that it is struggling to maintain authority amid internal and external pressures, including demands from other militant groups to accept a ceasefire. Despite these setbacks, the article points out that Hamas's foreign leadership and propaganda efforts remain active. Ultimately, the piece argues that while Hamas is at its weakest point, its survival could allow it to regroup and pose a future threat, if not decisively defeated. Moving on to Le Monde, which published a report examining Lebanon's decision to begin the gradual disarmament of Palestinian refugee camps, a move agreed upon by Lebanese President Joseph Aoun and Palestinian Authority leader Mahmoud Abbas. This initiative, set to start in mid-June near Beirut, is framed as a way to strengthen state authority and consolidate the PLO's position, especially as Hezbollah and Hamas face setbacks in their conflicts with Israel. The review highlights the complex challenges ahead, including resistance from other Palestinian factions, fears among refugees about their rights and also their future, and suspicions that the plan is influenced by U.S. pressure. The article also notes the Lebanese government's promise to improve refugees' rights, but underscores widespread uncertainty and distrust among camp residents. Moving on to The Telegraph, where Charles Moore published an article reviewing the significance of King Charles opening the Canadian Parliament in Ottawa, a rare and symbolic event meant to assert Canadian sovereignty amid rising external threats, especially from Donald Trump's rhetoric about annexing Canada. The piece explains how the monarchy, once seen as irrelevant by some Canadians, now serves as a unifying force in the face of outside pressure. The article, as you can see, highlights the King's unique role as both a constitutional figure and a symbol of stability for Canada and other Commonwealth nations. It also discusses the balance between soft power and hard power in international relations, warning that symbolic gestures must be backed by real strength. Ultimately, the article sees the King's presence as a timely reminder of Canada's independence and enduring alliances. A lot of debate was sparked by the video that circulated yesterday during French President Emmanuel Macron's visit to Vietnam, when his wife, Brigitte, appeared to shove him as they exited their plane. As you can see, while the video surprised the media and almost all newspapers and media outlets reported on it, many also reported Macron's reaction, dismissing it as a playful gesture. The Telegraph published a report today about the incident, which sparked debate about public display of conflict in relationships, especially among high-profile couples. The report cites relationship expert Peter Saddington, who notes that while passionate disagreements can be normal, physical actions are not a healthy way to resolve issues. The piece reflects on the pressures faced by political couples under constant scrutiny and argues that communication is always better than physical reactions. Ultimately, it suggests that the Macrons' strong partnership will help them move past the incident, as they have weathered public attention before. That's it for today. Thanks for watching.